Hello and welcome to the Tilehurst End podcast. Here with your host Ross Webber. The other one's he's not here. Ben. He's knitting. He's frolicking on the beach. He literally said, "I'd rather be doing anything but this." He's not here. Just like he's not here if you're an away fan at a Reading game. But what can you do? We have Ryan Jeffers here instead. How you doing, Ryan?
Good evening, Ross. Yeah, very good. Thank you, mate. Very, very good. Pleasure to be back on. I think the last time I was on the pod, I was dying of illness over Christmas. So it's nice to actually be well and
It's
be
nice.
on the
Yeah.
podcast feeling half dead.
Is the spring heat coming in England yet? There've been some nice looking games.
The end of last week was quite nice. Like everyone was like, "Oh, sunshine, what's this?" And then it's gone
Yeah,
back to the freezing cold and
that makes
miserable
sense.
rainy weather. But the sun's wanting to poke through. It's showing its opportunities every now and again.
Yeah. We're always stuck in. I'm always in battle with the skiers up here in Maine in this time of year, whereby I've got a coaching course that's meant to start on grass in less than a month now, and if I look out my window, I still see a good foot of snow on the ground in some places. So the skiers are happy. I'm less happy, basically, with what we've got.
Indoor football for the meantime.
Exactly. You've got a nice shirt on there. I bring it up because Ryan helps us with the YouTube podcast, of course. Do you want to explain that shirt there, Ryan? What you got going on?
So this is a Bohemians shirt, which I actually bought from the Guinness Store Factory. I visited Dublin a few weeks ago and spent the day looking for a football shirt and went to the Guinness Store Factory and came across this lovely number. So I pan it down a little bit so you guys can see the Guinness sponsor. It may be
Very
backwards,
nice.
but yeah,
Yeah.
Bohemians.
I think the shirts that you get, under the influence are sometimes the more jazzy and fun shirts they're in your collection. So,
Exactly.
not a
Drunk
bad
shirt,
thing, I don't think.
drunk shirt purchases. That's hard to say. Are the best purchases.
Exactly. Hey, I've always said that. I've always said that. All right. Well, let's get on to some other things that we're always saying here with episode 411 of the Tilehurst End podcast. Before we do that, thank you as always to our friends ZCZ Films for all of their help with sponsoring the podcast, putting a little bit in the tip jar, and then also actually think about tip jar. There is a Tilehurst End Patreon, so if you are into that kind of thing. If you do have other Patreon, content creators or anything like that, we are also on there, and all of that kind of goes into fun stuff, like whiteboards and Sabutio boards and things like that for videos. So if you ever want to chuck a little in the tip jar, we do have the Tilehurst End Patreon as well. All right. We've got a draw against Crawley and a win against Wrexham. 4 more points to talk about. Let's get into it right after this break. All right, so let's talk about Crawley first. The weekend game, as it were, a 1-1 draw, not losing, but conceding in the final minutes of the game. Am I right in thinking that's the second time in recent weeks that's
Uh,
happened?
when was the other time? I'm trying to remember.
Very well researched. This podcast,
Yeah,
very
no, I'm
well
trying
put
to remember
together.
when was the.
In any case, I don't think we necessarily deserve to win this game. So, look, we're trying to make the playoffs right now, and thanks to that win against Wrexham, we are, still in with a shout for sure. But yeah, these are the kinds of games that I think we're thinking you want to win, right, Ryan? Do you think these are points dropped?
Yeah, 100% points dropped. It's obviously frustrating when you can see it's in the pretty much with the last kick of the game. But as you said, I don't remember us creating a whole two lot throughout the game. Crawley
No.
frustrated us very, very well. We're pretty sturdy throughout as well, to be fair. And they went up the other end and poked an equaliser in, and it definitely felt like a loss at the time. But after winning last night, it's definitely cheered up a little bit, I'd say. I just quickly as well, because I'm sure we'll get onto his red card from last night, but shout out to Michael Stickland. I thought he was very good
Mm,
on Saturday. I thought he had a very good game considering it was his first league start.
yeah.
Very impressive from what I saw. Kelvin had a very
Hmm.
nicely taken goal as well. That was a very good finish from him. I thought he was offside, to be honest. I didn't realise at the time, but very good goal indeed.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're right that they were, they were set out to frustrate us. Even though they were at home, both teams put together generated a little over 1 xG in this entire game. So, quite frankly, 1-1 was was an overperformance. This was another Noel Hunt 0-0 in all but actual result. I would say. Um, for me, yeah, you're right about Kelvin. We will get onto Stickland because I want to talk about him a bit when we get onto Wrexham. Um, I think you're right that about Kelvin's goal. It was a really nice, turn and quite impressive use of his body. He has all of that, like, he has a wingspan. He's very tall. He's pretty technical. Like, I want him to be using that more often. So it's good to see him very Lucas Schwau-esque
He's got that
finish.
about him. He's got that, especially with his ball control and the way he controls balls coming over the top. We saw it quite a lot last night. That when the ball comes over, if it's a diagonal or something, his control is really, really good. His close
Yeah,
control for a man of his height is exceptional.
yeah,
And
yeah.
again, with that goal, we saw that, and that was a very Zhao-esque goal, as you said. I,
I
I enjoy
like
that about watching players like that. By the way, the ones that are that tall, when you just see them with their body kind of get around it, bring it down. It's good.
well, see, there's the kicker with all of that, right? So for everything that he does really well, Kelvin, there's always more that I want, and I don't know if I feel I was actually chatting about Kelvin. I was at the bar watching the game yesterday. I had a really good time, and I was talking about Kelvin with a friend of mine he's like 6'8" or something like that. So he's a very tall bloke who also plays football. And I said, I feel sorry for you sometimes because I think because of your height, you're expected to be, good in the
Yeah,
air, able to
yeah.
knock a ball down and all these kinds of things. But like, I don't know if every player actually wants to do that kind of thing.
From
Um,
my experience, obviously myself, I'm not massively tall, but I'm 6'2", pushing
you're
six
quite a
three.
bit taller than me. We were both surprised by that in October.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I had a brief spell when I was in goal for most of my youth footballing career. But I had a brief spell out pitch, and when they would launch the ball to me and expect me to win a header, it wasn't my strong point. Was not my
No.
strong point. It's definitely something that you learn rather than you're just sort of born with. I think.
Yeah, we are missing some. We're really missing a creative outlet right now, especially when Wing, is able to be marked out of a game. I think that we're feeling the absence of Ben Elliott in a way that we've talked about on the podcast before. But I think that because of that, having a player that you can play up to and knock the ball down is just so important. And I called that out in the Noel Hunt versus Sellers video, whereby the thing that I like about Wareham at the moment and why I was happy to see him come back against Wrexham is just that even though he is shorter, I think that he may actually average like a higher jump at
He
times
is really
with
good
some
in
of
the air
these.
out of his height. He is
Yeah,
exceptionally good. Honestly, I remember, was it Bolton? It might have been Bolton after Smith had just been sold. Wareham comes in against Bolton. He was almost a different man, and since he's been starting, since Smith's gone, the man when the ball comes up to him going forward, he can
yeah,
hold that ball up so well,
yeah,
and I'd say he's better than Smith at it personally. He's really, really good at holding the ball up and bringing others into play. It's
yeah.
definitely his main strength, and in the air as well, he can win those flick-ons.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Yeah, it's quite funny. He almost like arrives with his hip the same height as like the shoulder of some guys who are much taller than him. But that still puts him, only just above the guy. And I don't want to unfairly malign Kelvin because, again, like you say, that was a really nice goal. It's a lovely turn and finish, and also looked like a hell of a lot of fun to hit. If the ball
Yeah,
sits up for you like that, that is a
it's nice.
dream.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is the best. But I just think so. I'm looking at Kelvin's performance, and he had 18 touches in the entire game. Five of those were in the opposition box, so that's good. That's actually that's actually a few more than Smith would often get, with about 10 more touches overall. But I do think that like. Yeah, I was happy to see Wareham come back against Wrexham. I would say I think that when Reading are struggling to be creative as we are at the moment, it is just really important to have that boring, basic, play the ball up to him, knock it down. And I don't mind Kelvin being the guy there to actually collect that ball, from Wareham as the left winger. But yeah, I do think this game for me kind of showed that Wareham is the man to play in the center forward role until the end of the season.
Agreed. I actually prefer Kelvin off the left, where for me that's where he's always had his best games, off the
Yeah,
left. And
yeah,
whilst he's been okay up front, I think at the start of last season when he was up front, he there was a clear difference between him and Smith. I know it was his first real season breaking in, but when he moved out wide towards the end of the season, you could see there was flashes there. And then this year as well, when he's not been injured, off the left has definitely been his best position, I'd say.
yeah. Well, and that's when he does actually end up using that frame that he's got. I think it is coming off the left because up against a center back, he was often in this league a meaty fellow who's quite big. My boss at Seacoast, where I coach,
Yeah.
is an ex League One center back, and
Oh yeah,
he
I
is
remember him.
he
Didn't
is
he bring
also a terrifying man. Like I wouldn't go anywhere near him. If if I'm Kelvin, I wouldn't go near him. To be fair,
no,
so
very well away.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah, exactly.
we've seen the treatment that Smith, bless him, got through quite a lot of the season, and
Yeah,
yeah, don't fair play, Kelvin. Just stay away from
yeah.
them. Stay to the left, hopefully with a shorter fullback rather than a big meaty fella.
Exactly, exactly. Like I think that the player who's on the left is often a little bit more. It's a better matchup for Kelvin 1v1 than the center back. Like I know that Kelvin has better footwork than a lot of these guys, but he can be knocked off the ball relatively easily. So yeah, I think that having I just think he's better off the left. Do you like his headband?
It's a look. It's a
I
that's
like it. He
it,
looks like a
it's
ninja.
no. I'm not one that looks at. I know some people like the aesthetics, if you will, of certain football
Yeah.
brands. For me, that's not Calvin's aesthetic. It's his is the
Okay.
undersleeve and the gloves and bright boots, not the
All right.
headband. That's around
Not
him
the
else.
headband.
Leave that to
Well,
around him.
let me ask you about one more type of band then. What do you think of all the play around the player? What do you think about all the tape around the players' wrists? Because BBC Berkshire are asking a lot of questions about that this weekend,
It's
and they noted that they like to tape up their wrists.
yeah, it's odd. It's odd. I know I think Garcia does it quite a lot. I think, but one of his hands is it's. I don't. I always thought it was to cover like something. So if they had, I thought it might be a ring or something. I don't really know, but I guess it's if they
Yeah,
injury or weak hands that when they land, it doesn't like damage their fingers.
I
But like
think
I,
that's what it is. Yeah, I think it's
but
if you're going up in the air.
yeah, so you don't accidentally land on it or whatever. But again, it really depends on the player. Really depends on
Yeah,
the player. Like,
definitely partially a fashion thing. It's like
yeah,
Harvey Nibbs likes to rip the holes in the back of his socks as well.
yeah, and he's always in long sleeves, not an undershirt as well.
Yep, yep.
See, for me, I think if this is not a great comparison to have, but if Harley Dean rocked up and he had both his uh, hands like with the tape and then the
Yeah.
shirt with the undersleeve and everything, it just wouldn't look right. Because to me, Harley Dean's a short sleeve shirt tucked in, no nonsense centre back.
Yep, yep. Yeah, if he showed up, even Harley Dean wearing like grip socks, I would think is a little
Yeah,
bit
and the holes in the
suspect.
back of the socks, and I'm like, Harley, you're a big meaty fella. You're one of
Right.
those centre backs we were just talking about. You're going to win headers, and
Yeah. That's not who you are, Harley.
yeah.
Last question on Crawley before we move on to Wrexham. What did you think of Billy Bowden in this game? Because I think last week, the game ahead of this and the Crawley game were probably his best appearances so far in a Reading shirt.
Uh, the Exeter game last week for the before we got hooked would what I would say was his better and probably best performance that we've seen from him. I wasn't overly keen. It wasn't his best game. I'll say that wasn't.
Hmm.
I didn't look at him and think he was having his best game, and I was tad surprised. Did he get subbed off? I can't actually remember, but I
Yeah, I
thought,
think he was withdrawn in the second half. I'm trying to remember
yeah,
if that was for a Conde.
someone.
Fill some time.
I know. I want to say Wareham and someone else came on, but yeah, it wasn't his best game. I didn't think against Crawley personally. I thought his Exeter game was a lot better. Um, and I wasn't wholly surprised to see him not in the starting 11 with Chem coming back to fitness last night.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was actually Chem that he was withdrawn
Oh,
for in that game. So about 62 minutes in, yeah, and Wareham, like you're saying as well. So a little bit of a reorg. But yeah, good to see Chem come back actually. So that takes us nicely onto Wrexham. Some lineup changes in there. I think we saw that day. For me, the front three that I would like to see for Reading until the end of the season. So Kelvin on the left, we have Wareham in the middle, and we had Chem Campbell on the right. That really is. I don't think we can. Do you think there's anything stronger than that three right now?
There's nothing else that I think you bring into that three. I'd argue that maybe aside from Ben Elliott, that was, and obviously Amadou at centre back as well. That's our strongest 11, I'd say, at the moment.
Right,
Personally.
right.
So
No, yeah,
Amadou,
I totally agree. The midfield is definitely a question, but
yeah,
and Mbenge, like you said, but I think that was probably the best 11 that we can name apart from those players, like you said.
yeah,
Well, a much more encouraging performance. Obviously, Reading having some real issues generating just about anything creatively against Crawley. Really not the case against Wrexham. Not this wasn't some barn busting, like taking shots every 5 seconds kind of game. Reading still ran at a shot deficit in this game because they will never get out from underneath that particular item. But I think they were better. I think Wrexham definitely had moments where they could have, got back into the game, and they could have certainly made more of Stickland going off because, he really he was really doing a good job before then. But even with them having more shots, we had more shots on target. They had to block more shots than us, kind of indicating a bit of a scramble situation when that did need to happen. So what did you think? What did you think of the performance, Ryan? What stood
I
out to
will.
you?
I will describe it as a Noel Hunt masterclass, and I will simply describe that because of the use of Calvin Abrafa and Andre Garcia. So with
Mm,
Wrexham's formation, they set up with the back five, I believe, and there
yep.
was a lot of talk and uh, before the game about the players sort of using both Andre and Kelvin out at fullback to build the chances with because they had so much room where the press really wasn't coming. You saw it quite a few times, especially when Andre was cutting in and dribbling, that
Yeah.
one of the Wrexham players would have to go out and press them, which would leave another one of our players free from somewhere within the formation. And I think it worked really, really well. And Andre and Kelvin both had a really good game yesterday, I thought. I mean, I've
Yeah.
seen people say it's Garcia's best game in a Reading shirt. I wouldn't disagree with that. The fact that there wasn't as much pressure on them and you could clearly tell that there was sort of a focus on getting the ball to them and letting them progress the ball. And if they ran, someone's got to go and press them. And also, Wingy wasn't, I didn't think, as man marked. And you could tell, well, he scored, obviously, and you can tell by his performance as well that a lot of Reading fans would deem that as a really good performance by Wing. And I think that's one thing that a lot of fans don't consider when you comment on Wing's performance is, I know you guys have spoke about him many, many times, but when he gets marked out the game, it's really hard for him. It's really, and
Hmm.
most people just mark Lewis Wing, as I think you said in last week's pod, about what Ainsworth said. You mark Wing, you mark Reading out the game, and it was very true. But yesterday, I think where the ball was going to Andre and Kelvin a lot more, it was freeing up Wing a lot more. And also, I thought the midfield in general was a lot more fluid. There's a lot of
Mm.
times Gibbs was popping over to the left hand side, winning duels quite a lot in the first half. Savage was running around like a headless,
Like
possessed,
he does. Yep.
incredible. Honestly, that man recently has been on absolute fire. I think
Yeah.
not to sound like our fellow co-host from Wales, he was on fire. Brilliant yesterday, and overall, it was just a really, really, really good performance from everyone. And I feel so sorry for Michael Stickland because that was an awful decision in my eyes. Awful decision.
Yeah, no, you're right. That really wasn't the best decision. I think it's a really great point what you just said about the fullbacks, and I think yet again, football, the fullbacks are essential to how a team operates. Now, I completely agree that Kelvin Abrafo was great. I think that I've really enjoyed Michael Craig at right back this season. He has been, he's done his modern bits and bobs, and he's just the kind of player that I like. He is very technical. He's very two-footed. He doesn't lose the ball super often, but sometimes, we've had Andy Yiadom for a long time that showed us this. You want your right back to act more like a traditional right back, get up and down, create, try and make, darts towards the box, have that relationship with the wide forward as well, and create overlapping runs and things like that. And I think Brafer in the last few weeks has shown that he can be that player. I think it's been really frustrating for fans how injured he's been this season, because this really felt like a time.
Because he since the relegation, because I remember I think he scored against Watford in the cup in the relegation year, and I
Yeah,
thought he'd come through in League One and do really well, but bless him, he's been struggling with injuries quite a lot.
100%. Yeah, if he can get a season put together, I think he is the ready-made replacement, long term for Andy Yiadom, which of course allows us to put Craig back into the midfield if we want to. It gives him as a depth option, as an option for a slightly different type of playmaking. Talking about that different kind of playmaking, Garcia, I think, is so interesting. And what a player! You're right. I mean, I'm really glad we didn't sell him in January, because I think it's just clear that the amount of money that's going to be available for him now, even like he must be worth, $250,000 more now than he was in January.
100%.
Outstanding player. And what's funny is that, as we've moved away from Craig due to injury, and we've moved towards a Brafer who's this more traditional, touchline or touchline hugging fullback, Garcia has been coming inside more, kind of like you said. So we've almost reversed the side of the field, in which we have that extra player coming into midfield. And because Garcia is so good at escaping challenges, almost in that sort of Kobe Mainu way, where he's like an escape artist.
Very good
I think,
defense.
yeah. Like and it's funny. I think Rashisha can do this too. It's just that Rashisha takes an extra couple touches. Garcia can make his first touch positive,
Very good.
to take it away from another player. And having him come into that midfield, as you said, when there's a player going out, wide from Wrexham on one side to contest a Brafer, suddenly, if Garcia shows up in the middle, well, then your central midfielder's got a decision to make. Do I mark Garcia? Do I mark Savage? Do I mark Wing? And I think this slight tweak in the way in which Garcia is being used and the willingness to bring him across into the midfield, often like not that far away from Wing, is part of what's giving Savage a little bit of boost in the second half of the season. We'll talk about Savage more in the mailbag. But yeah, tell me about Michael Stickland's performance, outside of the red card to start off with, and then we can chat about that.
Because I feel really sorry for him. I honestly think he's been really, really good. The two games that he's played, I don't think he's put really a foot wrong. And I
Yeah.
still, he may have been sent off. I don't think he put a foot wrong. I think that's more on Joel, to be honest. But yeah, he's been great. He's been great, and he looks like a confident lad around the place as well. And especially with Binden going in the summer, I can see Stickland having a lot more of a role to play. I'm surprised he's not played a role sooner. I think he got nominated for PL2 Player of the Season last year, I want to say.
Mm.
And I was surprised that Louis Holzman actually got the call up over Stickland, because I thought Noel would turn to his 21s captain over Holzman. Now, I don't know if that's injury or whatever with Stickland, but he's been really good. Really, really good. Didn't look out of place at all.
100%.
But yeah,
Yeah, no, you're 100% right, and I think that what's exciting too is that a few weeks ago we said that it's almost like, especially with Mbenge injured, but even before then, it's almost like open audition between now and the end of the season for Reading centre backs. Who is going to replace Tyler Binden when he's gone? Well, just to give you a little bit of good news, Michael Stickland was the most accurate passer in the game last night, who played more than 45 minutes. He also made more passes into the final third than Tyler Binden last night. So,
good sign.
with less time on the field, he was actually able to affect the game more going forward as well. So, it's 3 or 4 days of work that also includes a red card. But I think it's a good 3 or 4 days of work.
Can I just say as well that Crawley, you could argue maybe they don't have the quality of striker that would challenge him as much. But last
Yeah.
night was a real test for him against Jay Rodriguez, who's just dropped down from the Championship and has played Premier League football for years. And obviously, as we know, Sam Smith. And I don't remember either of them really having a sniff at all. And that's probably
No.
credit to Bacon as well, but Stickland for 75 minutes didn't put a foot wrong, as we keep saying, and to do that against someone like Jay Rodriguez, I think is really good. I just hope he keeps his head up and keeps going. Obviously, doesn't let the red card affect him too much, and realizes how much of a harsh decision it was.
Yeah, if anyone didn't, actually see that or hasn't seen the highlights yet, Stickland picked up a yellow earlier in the half, I believe, or earlier in the game, I believe. And then with this particular one, it looked like he was winding up for the free kick out from the back that had already been taking a little while. It looked to me as if Pereira had kind of indicated that he may go to take it, and then decided not to. Stickland then went. This is how I saw it, and tell me if you saw it differently. Stickland then went to, like he went to take the free kick, and then must have had a shout from Pereira or something, to say, no, 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 you go. I'm going to come and take it, because he's run away from the ball after putting it down. Very odd decision though, yeah, to just get that yellow out immediately and book him. I don't think any of the Wrexham players were asking for it necessarily.
It
An
all
odd
happened
one.
in the space of about 10 seconds as well, by the way. It wasn't like it was 20 seconds, 30 seconds before a yellow card came out for time wasting. The referee blew the whistle. I think Stickland's taken about 4 seconds, and he's got the shout from behind from Joel to squeeze and push the pitch. And
Yeah,
obviously, Stickland's gone, oh, okay, all right, young centre back, I'm going to listen to my goalie. He stepped over the ball to go forward, and the referee's marched over, given him a second yellow, and sent him off.
yeah,
Which I there's been so many times. I mean, you look at the Exeter game last week. The amount of times Whitworth, their goalie, was wasting time, and
yeah,
the
yeah,
referee just didn't. I don't think Whitworth got booked. There's been
yeah,
so many games where they just won't book players for time wasting, and to book him for less than a few seconds. In reality, the fact it happened all across 10 seconds, and it's ludicrous to me.
yeah.
I don't get it.
No,
And
it
it,
was odd. It was very odd. I mean, like the point I was kind of making about like no one on the Wrexham side seemingly asking for it or whatever. Like there's 16 times a game, every single game, where the fans will yell that it's time wasting, and will make a stink that the referee could point to and say, oh well, you're time wasting or whatever. But it was the fact that it did just come out of nowhere like that. It reminded me of I think it was, way ages ago, Arsenal in the Champions League in like the Walcott and Van Persie sort of era,
oh,
and
was
Van
that
Persie sent off for kicking the ball away.
Yeah, so the whistle, there wasn't it at the Camp Nou, and the whistle had
Yeah,
gone
yeah,
offside, and he couldn't hear it because the atmosphere was so loud, and he still
yeah,
kicked it, and he sent him off, and
yeah.
everyone was like, "What? Where has that
What are
come
you
from?"
doing? Yeah.
Yeah,
The only thing I could think was that he redecided in his head in between the penalty and that the penalty wasn't actually in the box.
yeah.
So if you look at the challenge on Wareham, it's come in from I don't even know, one of the ones who's on the TV show.
One of those,
It's
one of those, like,
yeah, one of those ones. Who even knows? But he's come across Wareham right as he enters the box. Wareham's done a very good job of throwing himself down well inside the box, obviously. I thought maybe the referee's gone.
crossed my mind.
I
Did
might
cross
have swung this entire game in that direction, So
Let's try even it a third, but
still,
who knows? Who knows?
yeah. Well, I hope Stickland. I do hope Stickland keeps that. I hope he stays mentally strong, I suppose is the term.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
Stickland keeps going, even though he's going to be missing one game.
Keep calm and carry on. Exactly. Yeah. Keep pushing. I think so far, his audition for, who's going to replace Tyler Binden has been most promising. I want to briefly touch on Sam Smith because obviously he came back after making a terrible decision in January. It's a little bit of Schadenfreude, obviously, in watching your team beat one of your old core players. Something that's interesting about Smith, he was always a player that generated a decent amount of XG for Reading, and Reading have started struggling more in that department since and since he left. I was having a good conversation with Wim from the Tilehurst Den last night. He has continued to generate a decent amount of XG, but he's well underscoring it now, whereas he was slightly overscoring it with Reading. And I think that something that's really interesting with player assessment is thinking about what you're going to actually have that player doing and what the chances that he's going to get are. And I think there's a big difference between being fed the ball when you're in behind, by wing. So let's say that goal against Bristol Rovers, for example, great example of Smith just being sent in behind. And let's say that puts him slightly on the edge of the box. So the XG for the chance is 0.25. But he's one-on-one with a keeper, so he's going to have more likelihood that he's going to score. It feels like now at Wrexham, maybe made a slight misjudgment thinking that he would be a player who would be able to play in a system, with a team that are attacking, the final third more often. Because I think he's getting those same chances, but he's getting them with 2 or 3 players in front of him.
Yeah, they're flooding. Wrexham tend to cross a lot of balls in, and Smith, he's good in the air, but did he score a header for us? I'm trying to remember any that.
I think he did. He started to get a few, like about halfway through last season, but there was a period where he had only scored goals with his feet.
Yeah, and that's one thing that you can clearly tell from the Wrexham style of play is to get the ball wide, get it in the box, and a lot of teams are going to sit against Wrexham as well. You're right, and maybe there was like a slight misjudgment in profiling with that one. It's interesting. It's not like they haven't got any other options on the bench, though, is it? They've only got about 7 strikers.
Right.
Ollie
all
Palmer,
ones that you've heard of.
Yeah, Ollie Palmer, who scored against us in August, didn't even make the squad last night.
Yeah. I know that a lot of their but anyway, whatever. This isn't a Wrexham podcast. Screw him. Screw Sam Smith. He's gone now. Thank you for the £2 million. We'll take that playoff spot now. Maybe.
Maybe.
All right. Well, I think we'll talk about the playoff race a little bit. I don't know where I'm feeling right now. So let's talk it out. We'll go into the mailbag here right after this short break. Hello and welcome back to episode 411 of the Tilehurst End podcast. Ross here with Ryan back in the hot seat. How are those non-ill tonsils serving you on the pod today?
Very nice, very nice. Not having to worry about coughing every 3 sentences and not worrying about how I sound or look on the video. We really picked the wrong time to start the video podcasting when I looked half dead on the last one.
Well,
we're fit and healthy. So what more can you want?
What more can you exactly? And we don't have to play 2 games a week, so could be a lot worse. All right, mailbag time. So thank you for your questions for today. Got a few things in here that I think are kind of interesting. So Ryan, I'll go to you first. This is from Alistair RFC. Couple questions. What do you think has changed with Savage, in your opinion, in the last few months?
He's been listening to Ben's high praise of him and is finally playing to his potential. No.
Right. I like that idea, by the way. He's doing words of positive affirmation, and it's just the Tilehurst End podcast of Ben. Yeah.
Exactly. Before the game, he's just got Ben on repeat telling him how
right. It's Gangster's Paradise and Ben's The View from the Dolan or whatever.
Exactly. He's just reading through all of them before the game. But no.
Right.
Sav recently has been really, really good. I think since the turn of the year, especially since Noel's come in, I don't know what's happened with him, but he's honestly like a Duracell bunny. That man doesn't seem to get tired. He's everywhere. I can't really remember him having an off game in 2025, and that was last year. There was a few inconsistencies with his game. I mean, I think he was out of the team towards the end of the last season with Ruben as well. But since Noel's come in, and I mean, partly through the fact he's had to with Elliot being out, Sav's played a lot of football and has done really, really, really well. And I can't pinpoint a reason for it. I don't think there is a reason. Sometimes you could say with players that maybe if their contract's up at the end of the year, they're playing to sort of for a move. But we know Savage is going to be here for
He's the one who signed up for the longest. Yeah, he's here. He'll be working in the Oracle before he leaves Reading.
Exactly. So it's not like he's got a contract up in the summer where he needs to step up his game and show to other suitors kind of what he's like, or even show the club he's worthy of a new deal. But yeah, he's been really good recently, to be fair.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I spoke a little bit about how maybe the Garcia adjustments and how he's being used potentially have impacted Savage, and I think that also Kamara has improved in recent months, and just generally, like when your side of the field has a bunch of players improving on it, you're going to find it easy to play well as well. Good players help other players play well. So that is an element of it. I would say also, though, just on the human side, this must be the first time while he's been in a Reading shirt that Savage has felt. I'd say he must feel pretty secure the moment that he is going to start games. Um, and even I would say, so, we kind of hope that Ben Elliott comes back before the end of the season. The updates have gone quite dark on him. I did a Google News search for Ben Elliott earlier this week, and there's nothing.
Nothing at all.
Nothing.
I think
So,
Nelson's back on grass, but whatever
okay.
back on grass means, I don't know if that's full training or if he's in
You put a
non-contact.
French bulldog on grass, like that doesn't,
Exactly. Who
yeah.
knows? Who knows?
So, all right, well, yeah, but even if he does come back, and let's say, yeah, so this is the second part of Alice's question: does Elliot get back into the team? Personally, it's probably wise if you let him come back slowly from injury, given the nature of the injury that he's come back from. Yeah, I agree with this. I would actually keep Savage in the team right now, and I would say in the midfield, it would be Nibs that I would move out off and on, and I would only do that and if we're in a second game week. But that, if we get into a period where we have some Tuesdays, and there's not much left of the season, but I think that Nibs is very, very effective in the first game of the week and often less effective in the second game of the week because his skill set is more geared towards energy and stamina and all these kinds of things. So not that I don't think he's still a great striker. I think that there's an argument to be made that you might even want to play Nibs above Wareham if you play if you don't play Nibs in the midfield. Personally, I wouldn't do that, but I can see the argument. But I like the idea of, if we have the ability to bring, Elliot back slowly, some of these games, like the Shrewsbury game, whereby we just haven't really been able to create anything, it seems to me that it would be more valuable to let, Nibs take a rest for that game, be ready for the away game against like Huddersfield, or something like that, and let Elliot take care of the, weaker teams that need a back five unlocking or something like that.
I was going to say, so in the question of Elliot versus Savage, I mean that's a very good point because I was thinking it more Elliot v Savage, and I was going to almost describe it as if you need to unlock a defense, you would play Elliot because Elliot can create and Savage can run, and that was kind of the two differences I was thinking. But actually, it kind of makes more sense to do that with Nibs, just because
Mm.
Savage has got that long shot in him, and I'm sure Harvey's got a long shot in him as well. But having, I guess, Sav and Wing who can both hit long shots, and then Ben Elliott who's there to create as well could prove a difference. And I definitely think the three draws that we've had recently against Exeter, Crawley, and Shrewsbury, you stick Ben Elliott in that team, it's very different all of a sudden. Very,
It's
very different game.
killer, honestly. Like
Even if you stick
it's
Femi
tough.
Aziz in there, I think as well. I know Femi was long gone now, but you stick a player like that in there because I think
Hmm.
Chem didn't play against Exeter. I don't know if he played against Shrewsbury, but you stick a player like Femi where you've got to worry about him running at your defence. All of a sudden, you're freeing up Wing again,
Yeah.
and it's all about how can we free up Lewis Wing and how can we have more players that are unpredictable in the sense that can create a chance. And yeah, yeah. Elliot was definitely a big miss, and I think you're right in saying that Harvey can sometimes do with the rest and maybe not playing. Sometimes what is it, four
He
games in 4
played so many games, yeah, and then he goes sprinting afterwards or whatever with his Olympic brother.
Yeah, it's honestly it's. Oh, by the way, it's complete side note. There was a sweet moment that I saw him repost yesterday. Uh, so Harvey's brother
Yeah.
was watching the game with his parents, and
Okay.
obviously when Harvey's gone to take the penalty, his brother put a video on his Instagram of his dad with like a sheet over his head because he couldn't watch the penalty, which I thought was quite funny because
Oh,
he's
that's
tuned in.
great.
But yeah, no,
Has to
back
be.
back to the point. I agree with the sentence of Elliot for Nibs makes sense.
Yeah, I think that look, Harvey Nibs is one of the best players on the team, and against players against teams that are going to be expected to have more shots, even though that's every team against Reading right now. he is a very useful player to have in there to kind of help lead the press, but you need him to have a lot of energy in his legs to be able to do that, especially if you're going to ask him to do it for 90 minutes. And one of those things we're missing, especially against the weaker teams. Ben Elliott, what he did well and what we're missing right now is he was very good at receiving the ball in between the midfield and the defensive line, and then he would turn that ball upfield quite quickly and start running towards the back four, which gives the strikers chance to try and make runs. Just gives the midfielders chance to chase up and kind of squeeze up the pitch, and it means that that midfield now has the ball played in behind them. They're looking back towards their own net. It's more of a scramble. It's something that we're missing now. It's something like if you look back at some of the game, I'm trying to think early in the season. I think Cambridge was too late, and he had gone by then. But some of the games early in the season, when Elliott was able to get to the red zone, as Sellers called it, he was really just so good at taking on the half turn behind the defense. So yeah, I agree with Alistair that he's probably going to need to come back slowly. So maybe that's one way of doing it.
Yeah, and I mean, we just look at what's happened with Amadou recently as well. Is that Amadou? He got forced to come back into the team, I think, after an injury to Harley Dean at Huddersfield, I want to say. And obviously Amadou's now out again, so it is important that we, as much as we want them back, we bring them in slowly and we reintroduce them properly, especially Elliot, who's been out. I don't think he's played a game since, I want to say, November.
Yeah, he's probably going to need some U21, a couple U21 games at least. Yeah. Tom Sheeran, what was different in terms of setup against Wrexham versus Exeter and Crawley? Let's tackle that bit first, shall we? Do you want to get into that a little bit? Kind of have some.
Yeah.
We kind of got into it a bit. Go on.
Yeah, difference in setup. Definitely more. I'd say the focus of Reading's attacks against Wrexham being at the fullbacks, as I spoke about in the review section. We definitely were looking to target Kelvin and Andre a bit more, but I also think it's a bit more in the way that Exeter and Crawley set up as well, because we did dominate Wrexham for possession, but it felt more like Crawley and Exeter were paying us a lot of respect, and they were.
I feel like Wrexham let us dominate possession in the first game against them too. Like they don't seem to care about having the ball much. Wrexham,
but Exeter and Crawley, both weird games. But I think they were very, 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 very deep, and it was almost like we're going to be here for a point. Especially Exeter, they were very much the mentality of we're going to be here for a point, whereas Wrexham were obviously, you could argue they were favourites going into last night. So that could be a shift in mentality that plays a. It won't matter for Reading's setup as much, but I'm talking more the opposition setup, and then obviously that impacts the way that Reading will play as well. And also, I think I spoke about as well, they weren't closing down wing as much. Wing felt a lot more freer, and therefore Reading felt better, which is a common denominator throughout a lot of that.
It is kind of, we used to say, I think I said this recently, but we used to say when Swift plays well, Reading play well, and we're very much getting into when Wing plays well, Reading play well territory. Yeah. Exactly. Lovely goal, by the way. We didn't really talk about that, but really nice goal from Wing.
Yeah,
I enjoyed that a lot because I was watching it yesterday in the bar with some mates, and the Liverpool game was also on. And I'm like, thank you everyone the 5 guys that decided to watch Reading with me instead, which is great. But I was like, statistically, that was the best shooter in League One versus the best goalkeeper in League One in that particular. Yeah, he's very highly ranked for expected goals on target prevented. Their goalie,
isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Pereira's been up there as well, and more good saves from him, actually. This is the thing, like Pereira for me. Okay, so we're coming up towards player of the season territory. Like, I know, sorry, Tom, we'll get back to your question in a minute. We're getting towards player of the season kind of territory, and like when we're asking about that. And for me, Pereira is just so far and away player of the season. Like it's not even slightly close in my opinion. I think Sim actually is amusingly saying Tyler Binden, and I've been, obviously he's my boy, and he's brilliant, but like Pereira in terms of like we have this stat in baseball called wins above replacement, which kind of just indicates if you replace them with an average player, how many wins, how many more win, or how many fewer wins would you get, how many more wins you get with this player. and Pereira's just prevented, so many actual goals for a team that doesn't score that much and needs, as we've talked about before, either a drawing or a winning game state most of the time. It's just it couldn't be more vital, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
I mean, we've spoken about in the pod in the past. I think I have about goalies that win you games, and Joel is definitely in that category. I
Yeah,
think that's one thing we were lacking at points last season. Joel's coming out, particularly Bristol Rovers at home this year, from what I remember, where he was really, really good that day. He's pulled off a few last minute saves, and he's done it a few times this season where they'll run through 1-on-1, he'll make a save, and we'll go up the other end and we nick one or something like that.
yeah,
And yeah, he for me, he's in my top three. He's in my top
yeah.
three. And if you're going to ask, I'll go into mine quickly. My three would be Nibs, Amadou, and Joel for me.
Okay, that's a
That's
good.
my
It's a pretty good list. Yeah, kind of answered that, Tom. I mean, I think that we also talked about, the fullbacks being really important to how we played against Wrexham. And then I also think that playing up to Kelvin versus playing up to Wareham gets you quite a different result personally. So yeah, I think that, there's some personnel things that made a difference there. I think having Chem Campbell back made a difference too. Because he is, a competent winger, who's meant to play in that position and has been playing in that position for the vast majority of the season. So, yeah, I think there's some personnel stuff, but definitely some fullback use as well. And then he also asks, so you had to explain this term to me off mic before the pod, so you can go on this first. How many of our players are in the red zone, in your opinion? What on earth is Tom talking about here?
So I believe red zone was something that Jurgen Klopp used to describe about his players being in terms of, so it's to do with fitness. So how many games they're playing. Obviously, Klopp's famous for his high pressing, gegen pressing kind of
Yep.
style of football, where there are going to be a lot of high intensity sprints. I believe he's talking red zone fitness wise, so who is basically close to dying because they've played so much football that they're just going to break down and
Right.
crumble. And obviously, the red zone for players, some players' red zones will be different from others depending on who you are. I mean, I think Naby Keita, they spoke about the Liverpool team, he had quite a low red zone. He can play like a lot of football consistently.
Yeah.
Whereas if we're using a Reading option, Harvey Nibbs, his red zone would be really, really high. Like last year, I don't think he missed a game. I might be wrong in
Mm.
saying that. But in terms of our players and who are in the red zone, Lewis Wing,
Mm.
100%. He really needs a rest, bless him. We spoke about Harvey in the previous question, saying that maybe it's sometimes better to rest him in certain games.
Yeah, like it's tough because I do agree with you that he's got that high red zone or whatever. Like he can play a lot of games. But I do think that just given the player that he is, that he has more effectiveness when he's fully rested.
Yeah, and but I would say in terms of any Reading players close to it, I'm going to throw Garcia in there actually as well because he's played a lot of football in 2025, but he's not really had a choice there because of injuries. So
Mm.
for me, Wing and Garcia are the two that are close that I'd say
Okay.
to maxing out almost. And I would quite like to see Tom Carroll come in just for Wing. And I can see fans not being particularly happy with Wing not starting a game of football. But
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
honestly think if we really have a mentality about going to the playoffs, we need to give Tom Carroll a go and Wing a rest for maybe, not even if it's a full game, 70 minutes. Rest him for
Yeah. Yeah.
75 minutes, whatever it is.
Yeah, I'd like to see. I mean, like, I'd kind of like to see. I'd almost like transition it slowly, whereby I'd play Carroll. You could almost like if Elliot's not back, you could try playing Carroll in the sixth position and then play Wing, up in where Nibs would be. But I do think that like, don't get me wrong, that could cause more issues than it actually helps. So, changing personnel and where they're going to be in the build up this late in the season, you got to coach that. So that could be an issue. I don't know, but if I was coaching Tom Carroll right now, I would be coaching him up to do the build up parts of Wing's game, knowing that he doesn't quite have the same, thunder foot or whatever underneath him. But yeah, that's pretty where I go. If you'd asked me this question last week, I would have said Amadou and Benge. And
Yeah,
unfortunately, that's kind of proven the case. And I think that he's crucial to this run in. Now, we spoke about Sticklin and how well he played. He's now going to be suspended for a game, obviously. And I suspect that he will, start more games between now and the end of the season. But Mbenge, for me, if we could get him back and we can just I don't know, get him to the end of the season in tape, wrap him up like a Christmas present. That's
Just
the
put
way.
as many strap-ins as possible just to keep that knee going.
Everything, yeah. Get him a bionic knee. Get him one of those. There are exoskeletons now that you can use to like walk yourself around the place. You can get like fancy legs.
Yeah, well,
So yeah,
just through it.
we've got
It's
everything in America. We've got tax wars. We've got fancy extra legs that you don't need. It's great.
what more do you want? What more do you want?
Exactly. Just remember, Ryan, you will need to send me 25% of your listenership for this particular podcast once you're
Oh,
done. Yeah, so
hey, well, I'm
we'll
not
work
sure
that
about that
out.
one. Not sure on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I think that's I think that was a good one. Only you know what, we'll leave it there for the mailbag this week, because we kind of went into that for a little while. There's some interesting questions. Thank you, Alistair. Thank you, Tom. Alex asked in the email. I'll just call it out, Alex. Good to hear from you as always. Doesn't that one feel good against Wrexham?
Very good. Very
Very
good.
good. Yeah. I don't want to give them too much airtime. I don't want them to think that we care that much, but also,
We did a little
jog
bit.
on, lads. Yeah.
You can nick our striker. Go nick out one of our best players.
Yeah,
It's fine. Our free transfers
exactly.
and beat you all up. But hey,
I hope Sam Smith to you really feels like a great FFP decision in a few years'
yeah.
time. Anyway, let's get into the preview. Game coming up this week. Oh, it's only a 1-game week, so only one game to preview. Here we go. All right, welcome back to the Tilehurst End podcast. Preview time. So these ones are at 11 o'clock in the morning for me, by the way, because it's daylight savings already here.
You've already
Yeah.
jumped. Is it jumping forward or back?
We've already sprung forward. I'm springing with unprecedented energy, into a Stevenage preview. So Stevenage, 10 points fewer than us so far in the league. Same number of wins as us in the last 5, but they are not unbeaten. They've also lost 2 of their last 5, so it's a very up and down. They are in 12th place, and they are about as 12th place of a team as you could be in League One this season, I would say.
Preston North End of League One, because Preston North End loved a 12th in the Championship, didn't they?
Yeah. Which, to be fair to Preston, I always think year on year, it's more and more impressive that they manage that with the amount of league money sloshing around in that league.
Agreed.
But
it is very impressive, but yeah.
Yeah, it's very impressive. Yeah. So anyway, Stevenage, I think this is probably another game. Look, it's tough, right? Because I think after the Crawley game and the extra game, we were kind of like, there's no way that we can, there's no way that we're going to make the playoffs now. Brian, Ben and I were very glum, a week ago, because football is fickle. Now, obviously, it feels like it's well back on, right? If we win this game,
we're winning the playoffs, all right? Last week we weren't making them. This week we're winning them.
I hate my brain. Like, I literally, when we won that game, we got 10 games left, sorry. So there's only 30 points left on the table. And my brain went, it's 10 points off automatics. So
I saw some, I can't remember who tweeted it, but a fan tweeted last night saying that if we won Crawley, Shrewsbury and Exeter, we would have been 4 points off of Wickham. And I was like, missed opportunity there, but hey.
It's like, okay, but if
went from no playoffs to could they? Maybe.
Yeah. I see. There you go. Yeah, it is annoying, isn't it? Like those points dropped in recent weeks are all the more of an issue now. Reading are 2 points outside of the playoffs right now. Everyone's played the same amount of games, so there's no games in hand or anything kind of like that, which is actually interesting because it gives us a good sense of where the playoff race is for the last 10 games of the season. So Wickham and Wrexham both with 68 points in second and third place. We've got Charlton with 63, Stockport with 62, Bolton was 60 in sixth place, and then us and Huddersfield, we both sitting on 58 points in seventh and eighth place. And the other two teams are kind of, the other teams are falling off the back a little bit there now. I will say first, I predicted Reading to make the playoffs this year with tongue in cheek, but it is remarkable to me, given everything that's happened, that they're doing this.
I'll go and say this. I think it's the greatest achievement in English football this season. I'm just going to throw it out there. Even if Birmingham break the points record, how on earth we're doing this,
Yeah,
I will never know. And
yeah,
what we've signed three players all season, one
yeah,
free
yeah.
on a short term contract, two loans,
Hmm.
and we're sitting just outside the playoffs. And we're all thinking maybe we could have a trip to Wembley after losing our best striker in January, after losing our best winger late in the window in
Yeah.
August as well. It's remarkable. Honestly,
The
it's
recruitment done in the first window down after League One is, I mean, that's still kind of the window that we're running off. Like, incredible work, really.
yeah,
Like, just brilliant. Like, you want your club to be smart and make, purchases that, or like make moves that, purchases, we can't make purchases, make moves that, improve the team, long term and short team. And in the last couple of years, like obviously things off the pitch aren't good in terms of the ownership situation, but in terms of the actual people working on the football side in the club, there's been an improvement for sure. It's impossible to deny. So
shout out to Brian Carey because he has been exceptional.
that was the name I was gonna, call that as well. Really, a dream guest for the pod one day,
Yeah,
Brian. By the
yeah,
way, we do really want to talk to him, but yeah, really just fantastic work. All of these players, for me, for what they're doing, are Reading legends is a silly phrase, but I will remember this team very fondly and this era very fondly. I think, regardless of what happens. Enough mushiness. Let's get back to Stevenage. Who would you start at centre back then? Because we're a little bit sparse now.
yeah. This is the question. So obviously we've got Amadou that's out, Stickland that's suspended. I think Noel said to Radio Barks last night that Harley might not be able to play a full 90.
Okay.
And then obviously we've had Louis Holzman, who's actually damaged his eye socket. So whether he can play or not. So really, are we looking at maybe a Carney return and playing at centre back?
Yeah, I was thinking Kanu is maybe the only other one. Oh, hang on a minute. I'm being stupid. We played Andy Yiadom at centre back a few times last
We
year.
did. We did. Yeardon could step in at centre back. It could be a case
Yeah.
of Harley plays 45, Yeardon plays 45, or something like that.
This
It's
is
very
why it's insane that we're like this close to the play. We're talking about tying together one of our centre backs by essentially like taping the pieces of Harley Dean and Andy Yiadom that work together.
screw them together, and hopefully we get a centre half out of the both of them.
Yeah, they'll be fine. Like, what's even the problem? Yeah, but I do feel for Kanu because, like, when you meant like he's the obvious one there, and it's a shame Dorset's not available too, I guess.
Yeah,
But
I want to see
um,
those back at some point. I want to see him
yeah,
just
which is funny because now I wouldn't. At the start of the season, I was kind of like him over Garcia, but now I wouldn't make that change at all.
yeah,
So maybe Dorset's career now does lie at Reading, does lie back in the centre back position. Who knows? It kind of comes down to what Noel thinks of him, I suppose.
yeah. I mean, I think when Giroud came back for a few games from his injury from the start of the season, I think he started ahead of Garcia, and then obviously he got injured
Yeah,
very quickly into. I want to say it was a Tuesday night at the start of the year. I can't really remember when it was, if I'm honest. But I know he went off injured again. But Giroud came straight back in instead of Garcia, which I thought was an interesting sign.
yeah, for sure. Well, regardless of who starts in that center back position, I would, yeah, I think it's probably going to be Harley or Yiadom, and it'll be interesting to see how close Kanu gets to that spot. I think, but do you think we have enough to
Oh,
beat Stevenage?
yeah, of course we do. Of course we do.
Yeah,
I do worry that we may have given it 180% against Wrexham,
yeah,
and there might be a slight drop off, but I still back us to have enough against Stevenage to beat them. Or did we draw
yeah.
at their place? I want to say we drew.
I was just gonna look that up. I don't quite.
I know we won last year, but I want to say we drew this season with Ruben.
Yeah, I'll have to.
And
Wow,
we beat
well
them at home at the
researched.
start of last season as well, because I remember Steve Evans was.
1-1 draw. Yeah, 1-1 draw in both of them. So, yeah, I mean, like, they've had a pretty good season. They are consolidating their position in League One, and good for them. We've seen with Exeter what that can do for a club, and brings money in. It's good for them. But yeah, I mean, they should be on the beach, and we should be really pushing for these playoffs. So you got to
Hunting for
hope
those
we win
playoffs.
this one.
Hunting for those playoffs. Oh, the players have just got to think like one last push, and then Shrewsbury got called off today, so it'll be a nice 2 week rest for them. One last push.
I would just say to them, if you enjoyed, beating Sam Smith, last night, just think how funny it's going to be when Wickham go up automatically and Reading beat Wrexham in the playoff final. Just think how funny it's going to be.
See, I wouldn't say that just because I don't want Wickham to get automatically promoted, but I'm gonna say yeah, okay.
Yep. Good. Just yeah. Less said about the upshot of that, the better. But anyway, end of the podcast now. Ryan, thanks for coming on today. And Ryan's also been helping, by the way, with the Why You Should Watch Reading series, which has been super fun to produce so far. And really appreciate the watch. So what is that?
It's been very fun to edit the Why You Should Watch Reading, so go check them out if you haven't checked them out before.
Yeah, Ryan's making me pop all over the screen, which I like. It's funny, and yeah, definitely recommend checking those out. And really appreciate everyone who's watched those so far. They've been a really good reception. So, yeah, more of those coming out this week. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, ZCZ Films. Thank you, Reading, for giving us a nice win to talk about as well. This is the Tilehurst End podcast, as always. Yeah, looking forward to hopefully another win on the books this weekend. Thanks very much for listening. Come on, you R's.